Okay, I think this one's actually going to be a quick video. We're gonna try to do that for once. Listen, Black Myth Wukong, right? When it first came out, I thought it looked phenomenal, right? The trailers were fantastic, so on and so forth. I have to say that I'm not that excited to play it. I think it's one of those games that, if it is an exciting moment, it will happen many years later when I finally give it a go. So me personally, I'm happy for his success. Great that he did what he did. But it's not something that I'm like, oh my god, I'm head over heels over. It's cool. It's a game that exists. I'm happy for it. What I want to talk about though is its potential impact, because I believe it is now being pegged as China's first AAA game, and it has received a just cataclysmic amount of support on Steam. Like these things are up to like what 1.7, nearly 2 million concurrent players on Steam. But as it turns out, 88% of them are from mainland China, which is a good thing because I believe, if I remember correctly, that a lot of the gamers in China, they prefer mobile games, right? That is the thing that they like to do. Now, there's also like a really big like PC gaming culture and everything like that, but single player games are hardly ever a part of that conversation. Usually it's MMORPGs, the kind of MMORPGs that are super successful but are so localized that they usually don't even need to go outside of China. So that is usually the reality. Either it's a mobile game or it's an MMORPG that is specific to China or the region, which is fine. It's amazing. It's good. But if this game, Black Myth Wukong, could give a little bit of insight, a little bit of curiosity, impart a little bit of curiosity to those gamers to be like, hey, there's a whole world of single player AAA quality games. And I know that they do not necessarily have access to every single AAA game that comes across our screens, but just a few. Just my hope is this, right? Just very quickly. My hope is that it might help combat some of these mobile game development tendencies, especially when it comes to monetization. I'm talking about the battle passes, the season passes, the loot boxes, the gacha mechanics, all of those kind of like mobile game focused monetization systems that are very different from what single player games typically propose, which is there's a single box price at the beginning and then you get the full package. If Black Myth Wukong could act as a Trojan horse to be like, hey, mobile gamers, look at single player game packages, look at AAA single player game packages, look at what they could offer. I think that would be fantastic for the industry. I'm not just talking about like from a console perspective, like PlayStation games, so on and so forth. No, like games like Baldur's Gate 3, indie games. There are so many great indie games that would love an audience the size of China's, audience, because there's a billion gamers there. Sorry, there's a billion people there or more, right? So there's probably a good 200 to 300 million gamers that could potentially become a market. It will be fantastic. Now I know there's a lot of like censorship, so it will not be available to every single indie game that will come out. But still, it will be a fantastic thing if, let's say, even 10% of the gamers that play Black Myth Wukong would then kind of generate that curiosity within themselves and go looking out for games that are a little bit closer to our side. Because the reverse is true. Mobile games make so much money that now they are encroaching on our space. In fact, they're already here. A lot of the free to play games, just by default, the free to play live service games incorporate a lot of like mobile game mechanics. Now you have things like Genshin Impact, Xenosaga Zero, The First Descendant, which are basically gacha games, right? And it's like, it feels, and they make a lot of money on our side, right? They make a lot of money on the console gaming side, on even the PC gaming side, just outside of AAA gaming. And it just feels like they are encroaching on our territory and we are losing ground because they make so much money for these companies, so much money for these publishers. That's why there's such a gold rush to find the next Genshin, the next Fortnite, the next Call of Duty Mobile, the next Zenless Zone Zero. It's man, it's a scary thing to think about what will happen if these games keep on marching towards us and eventually making it so that the idea of a AAA single player game where you pay your 70, 80, 60, 50, $30 at the beginning and you just receive the entire game at the end, in the next 10 years, that could erode to be a strange idea for most of the gamers out there, and that's scary. So I would encourage Black Myth Wukong, um, and wish it great success, because I would want it to act as a Trojan horse to maybe even out the tide a little bit. Now, that being said, that's for the game's commercial success. There's a lot of commentary around this game about the people and the context with which it was made. Accusations of misogyny, accusations of just I guess there's a cultural clash, because this is again kind of like China's first AAA single player game, and the people that make the game may live under a different cultural context, but now that it is so widely popular in the West as well, there's a conversation to be had there. And a lot of gamers, they don't want to have that conversation, which is perfectly fine. But they also say things like, we wish we could take the politics out of gaming. Now, I wanted to make a separate video about this, so I still may, but just a quick version is this. You can't take politics out of gaming. Gaming is an art form, and art exists within the context that it is created in, that it is released in, and that it is interpreted in. There's those three moments are always true, and some of them matter more than others. You can have an art that is created, for example, take Animal Farm, a book written by George Orwell, I'm pretty sure. I think it was George. And obviously that was done in a particular context where the animals themselves, the actual book is an allegory for the political climate at the time. And when it came out, it was a big brouhaha. Now, if you are a person reading it so many years later, you may not really care about the initial context, but you still get to interpret it, within the context that you are living in. And that's why it can be kind of everlasting and evergreen. So that's fine. It's okay for art to encourage conversation, to engender conversation. That's great. How would you take the politics out of gaming though? How would you take politics out of an art form? The only way for politics to be out of art is if it just doesn't exist at all. The art, that is. Because nobody wants to make meaningless art. Everybody wants to make art that says something, that speaks to someone. And if it does that, it has to impart onto that person something, and that thing will always be able to be tied to politics. Again, you don't have to care about every single political conversation. There are plenty of political conversations that deeply matter to me. Things around race, abuse, misogyny, xenophobia. Those are things that I typically tend to lend an ear to. Sometimes I speak my mind about it, other times I don't. But typically, I'm attracted to that. Things around the environment, though, things around gender and identities, things around, I guess you could say something like the meat industry and everything like that. Those are conversations that typically I'm not interested in having. I may be aware of them, but typically I don't lend an ear to them. So it is perfectly fine for you to pick and choose moments where you don't want to pay attention to any of the political side or whatever is going on behind the scenes. You just want to enjoy the art for what it is. You want to just play the game and not think about it. That's perfectly fine. That is your right to do so, and no one should ask you to do any different. But I think it is silly to then ask everyone to not care about the conversations that an art piece allows them to kind of think of and to talk around and so on and so forth, because it's a good thing. Art has always been made to challenge us in some way. It entertains, it challenges, it pleases, it soothes. It's a good thing, And then a lot of people will say, well, a game like The Last of Us Part 2 is highly political, which is true, right? Like, it has a definite, message that it is sending, and it is not shy about its themes. And then they'll say, well, we just don't want that. Just take a game like Tetris. You know, look at Tetris. Tetris, you're just flipping bricks around and you're just putting them down, and that's pure gaming. That's what it's about. It has no politics in it. It is unsoiled. It is just pure gameplay fun. Not knowing that they are completely wrong. Tetris is one of the most political games. Did you know that Tetris was invented in the Soviet Union? And when it first came out, especially when it was going to be exported beyond the borders of the Soviet Union, it was labeled as a Soviet mind game. Like, people literally thought it was like hypnotic and it was going to turn people into like sleeper agents. It's literally one of the most political games ever. And you're just flipping bricks. And this is what I mean. The art content itself might not be political because there's no gender identity politics going on when you're flipping bricks around, right? But art doesn't exist unto itself and an island, you know, unconnected to anything else. It exists within context. So when it first came out, even though it was just flipping bricks, it was one of the most political games ever. It was a huge situation. It was a huge effort. There was literally espionage. And if you don't believe me, people made a movie about it. That's how wild the story is about this little brick game. So my point is this. You cannot take the politics out of gaming. Black Myth Wukong seems to be a great game. The reviews on Steam are through the roof. People seem to be enjoying it. I'm very glad for you. But please, at the same time that I'm happy for it, and I believe it could actually do something great for the rest of the games around it. It could introduce single-player indie games to audiences that may never have cared to look before. That's fantastic. It could introduce AAA experiences like the Assassin's Creed franchises. It could, the Ghost of Tsushimas, the Returnals. It could introduce other AAA quality games from all publishers, the Halos, the Gears, the Forces, all of those, to gamers that would not have normally looked. And that is another fantastic thing. There is also a political conversation that is going to be controversial. And it's okay. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Our medium is mature enough to provide entertainment and accept that that entertainment is political and therefore can be politically criticized or whatever. Because films do this, books do this. It's like art does this. Whether it's dancing is political. That's crazy. It's just a person moving their body around, but that's political. Gymnastics are political. The Olympics just went through hyper political event, right? But you can still just enjoy the swimming competition if you just want to care about the swimming competition and none of the other things behind it. So again, as gamers, we should support the games that we love, and we can pick and choose which conversations we want to have. Sometimes you don't want to think about any of the political meanings in The Last of Us Part 2, no matter how much the game is about supporting those themes. Other times, you want to be super involved in the political conversation either around the game or within the game. And that's fine. Our medium can do it all. So that's all, guys. I will talk to you next time. I hope this video was okay because I see it a little bit stuttering. But hey, you know what? Sometimes that's just the way it goes. All right. See you.